My name is Victoria, and at 32 years old, I never expected my family to stab me in the back on Christmas night. I figured they'd finally see my worth when I came back broken from a deployment accident. Instead, over that holiday dinner, my mom locked eyes with me and snapped, "Get out of my house, you useless one." My sister didn't hesitate, she shoved me hard toward the door. I stumbled on the icy steps, the fall snapping my arm like dry wood. Pain exploded through me, but no one moved. Not her, not my brother, not a soul. They just watched as I lay there, the front door slamming shut behind them. With my arm throbbing and no options left, I dragged myself to the bus station in the freezing dark, heading to my grandma's horse ranch in rural Montana. Those 5 cold words did not make me fall, but lit a fire in me. From now on, those who sowed betrayal will taste the consequences they never expected. 6 months later, my phone rang. Mom's trembling voice echoed in the night. "Save your sister's company." I clenched the phone tightly, the corners of my lips curling up. This time my answer would make them never forget. As I unpack this path from raw betrayal to cold payback, drop your location in the comments and subscribe if tales of family knives in the back and rising stronger hit close to home. Growing up under Susan's roof set the tone for everything. My mother. Susan made sure her love came with strings attached. "I bought you that backpack, so you better ace your tests this quarter," she'd say. Or after all, "I've sacrificed the least you can do is scrub the kitchen spotless." Nothing was free. It was always a bargain. My father left when I was 6. I have faint recollections of a man with a calm demeanor who played games with me before bed, but those blurred over time. After he departed, Susan often highlighted how I mirrored him in bad ways. "You have his weak posture," she'd scoff, always slouching through life. The only steady comfort came from my grandmother, Margaret, Susan's mother. Her horse ranch in rural Montana was my escape, a place where I could unwind without conditions. During summer visits, I'd assist with the horses, learn to prepare fruit preserves, and listen on the porch as she recounted her experiences. "Victoria," she'd say, as we groomed the stalls, "you have a resilience that challenges can't crush. Keep that when times turn tough." I held on to those phrases through school as Susan's attitudes grew more unpredictable. Some days she'd seem affectionate, picking up my preferred treats or inquiring about my classes. Those rare moments fueled my hope that she'd eventually offer love without strings. My siblings mastered her system better than I did. Michael, 2 years younger, turned into a shapeshifter, molding himself to whatever suited Susan at the time. Amber, 4 years my junior, honed flattery from young. "Susan, you look so young," she'd comment, and Susan would light up. Meanwhile, I stayed the defiant one, the problematic one, the one who questioned too much and required too much. By 18, I knew escape was essential. The army appeared ideal, a path out, a chance to contribute to something bigger, and oddly, a method to gain Susan's respect at last. The day I announced my enlistment, I spotted a rare glint in her eyes, approval. "The service will straighten you out," she remarked. "Instill some order." What she omitted, but what emerged soon after, was that my commitment also opened financial doors for her. As I geared up for basic training, she mentioned casually how finances were tight, how raising 3 kids alone was tough, how the roof leaked. I pledged my first allotment to send money home right from the recruiter's desk. The officer had just outlined my pay scale when I mentally earmarked a chunk for Susan and the others. It felt right. Family backs family after all. Basic training was grueling but straightforward. For once, the guidelines were logical. Push hard, obey commands, aid your squad, and advance. Susan's random standards gave way to the clear directives of my instructors. I excelled there, finishing near the top. In my initial deployment, I arranged an automatic transfer of $500 monthly. It cut deep into my earnings, but base life covered most costs. On sparse calls home, Susan sounded pleased to hear me. "The community admires your uniform," she once shared. "I parade your pictures. My daughter defending the nation. Those comments carried me through isolated nights abroad, through uncertainty and isolation. Susan was proud. I'd finally achieved something correct. As time rolled on, her demands escalated. The roof became a garage overhaul. Then Amber needed tuition help. Then Michael faced a layoff and returned home. Each instance I upped the amount, often grabbing extra duties or risky posts with bonus pay. When I got leave to visit the phone, warmth seldom showed in person. Susan had repair lists ready or commitments that kept her occupied. Yet there were flickers of cake, with my liked topping a collection of articles on military feats, possibly involving my group, a brief embrace as I left for the airport. I treasured those like rarities, proof that deep down Susan cared. I just had to strive more, provide more, improve. Margaret saw the pattern clearly. On my prioritized ranch trips, despite Susan's gripes, she'd try to illuminate gently. Victoria, affection shouldn't demand so much effort, she'd note as we walked the pastures. You can't purchase genuine care, and if you could, it wouldn't hold value. But I wasn't prepared to absorb her insight. The cycle was locked. I'd serve. I'd transfer funds. And one day it would suffice. One day I'd return to the accepting family I'd craved. That vision propelled me through a decade of duty, through multiple tours, through losing comrades and their memorials. Throughout, I clung to serving not only the country but earning my spot in their affections. How mistaken I was. Those first months in the Army reshaped me. The rigid structure replaced Susan's erratic demands with clear purpose. I threw myself into training, waking before dawn, running drills until my muscles burned, and studying tactics late into the night. My instructors noticed, and I graduated among the best in my class. Deployments followed, harsh, dusty outposts where I learned to trust my unit like family. I set up a monthly transfer of $500 home, a chunk of my paycheck that felt like a lifeline to Susan, Michael, and Amber. Living on base kept my costs low, so I justified the sacrifice. Family supports family, I told myself. Susan's calls were rare but warm when the money hit her account. Your service makes us proud, she'd say, her voice softer than I'd ever heard. I'm showing everyone your photos in uniform. Those words kept me going through long shifts and sleepless nights, convincing me I was earning her respect. But the requests grew. 500 became 600 when Susan said the car needed repairs, then 700 for Amber's college books. When Michael lost his job, it hit 800, forcing me to take extra patrols with hazard pay. I didn't question it. Each transfer felt like a step toward the love I'd chased since childhood. On leave, Susan's warmth faded in person. She'd hand me lists of chores or stay busy with social events. Still, small gestures, a favorite pie, a quick nod kept my hope alive. I just needed to give more. Margaret saw through it during my ranch visits. You're buying affection, Victoria, she warned as we mended fences under Montana's wide sky. It's not real if it comes with a price. I brushed it off, too stubborn to listen. Patricia, a fellow soldier I'd grown close to, echoed her on a call from base. You're giving too much, she said. They're using you. But I clung to my dream of a family that cared. My unit became my true home, comrades who shared meals, fears, and victories. We celebrated promotions together, mourned losses together. That bond carried me through years of service, through sandstorms and gunfire, believing I was building something back home too. Susan's letters grew shorter, her calls less frequent, but I kept sending money, certain it would bridge the gap. Each deployment I pushed harder, took riskier assignments, thinking one more check would make me enough. It was a lie I told myself to survive the loneliness. The truth was waiting to break me. My final deployment was meant to be routine. Our unit escorted supply trucks through a quiet zone, a route I'd run dozens of times. I was joking with a new recruit about staying alert when the truck ahead swerved to avoid debris. The jolt came fast, metal crunched, and I was thrown forward. I woke in a field hospital, my right leg screaming with nerve pain, my femur fractured. The doctor's words were blunt. I'd survive, but my military career was done. Months of surgeries and therapy followed, teaching me to walk with a cane while painkillers barely dulled the ache. The worst was losing my purpose, my unit, my sense of belonging. Susan called more than ever during those hospital days. Her voice, softer than I'd known, promised comfort. "We're fixing up your old room," she said once. "You'll have space to recover." "The church group's planning meals for our wounded hero," she added later. I clung to those assurances, picturing a homecoming where I'd finally feel wanted, a family dinner with me at the center, Susan helping with my exercises, a real bond at last. That hope carried me through the grueling trip home. The military arranged transport to the airport, but from there I was on my own. Each step with my cane shot pain through my leg, and navigating crowded holiday terminals drained me. As my plane descended into Montana's snowy landscape, I felt a flicker of belonging. I was returning not just to a country but to a family, or so I believed. When I landed, my phone showed no messages, no missed calls checking on me. I dialed Susan. "Just got in," I said. Her response was flat. "Oh, today, we're swamped with Christmas prep. Can you grab a cab?" The ride to our suburban house cost nearly $80 a sting with my funds running low. The place was decked out, twinkling lights, a giant wreath, a glowing reindeer display Susan loved showing off to neighbors. I struggled up the icy path with my duffel leaning hard on my cane, sweat soaking my coat despite the chill. No one came out to help. At the door, I hesitated, unsure if I should knock or enter. Susan opened it before I decided, her face more irritated than welcoming. "You're letting the cold in," she snapped, turning away. The house smelled of holiday spices, but the warmth I'd imagined was gone. "You can use your old room," she said without looking back. "It's a storage space now, but Michael set up an air mattress." I limped upstairs, each step a jolt of pain. The room was unrecognizable: boxes, old furniture, no trace of my childhood. A half-inflated air mattress sagged in the corner with a thin blanket tossed on it. No photos, no memories, just clutter. I sat on the mattress, its creak echoing my sinking heart. 10 years of service, thousands sent home, and this was my return. I pushed down the hurt, telling myself they'd warm up once the holiday rush settled. But deep down, I felt the truth creeping in. This wasn't the home I'd dreamed of. By evening, the house buzzed with relatives for Christmas dinner. Aunts, uncles, cousins filled the rooms, their chatter loud with updates on jobs and holiday plans. I sat quietly in a corner, my leg throbbing, making it hard to keep up with their quick exchanges. My cane leaned against the chair, drawing awkward glances but few words. I felt like a ghost, my presence barely acknowledged. Susan called everyone to the dining room, where a polished table gleamed with her best china and a centerpiece of sparkling ornaments. She pointed me to a cramped seat at the end, tucked against the wall. "Your cane won't trip anyone there," she said sharply, her tone slicing through me. I maneuvered into the chair, my legs stiff, every move watched by relatives who quickly looked away. Dinner began with a brief prayer, no mention of my service or sacrifice. Talk swirled around promotions and new cars, Susan beaming as cousins shared their wins. I tried to join in. "My unit rebuilt a clinic last tour I started, but Michael cut me off." "Pass the potatoes," he said, eyes fixed on his plate. Each attempt to speak was drowned out or ignored, Susan steering the conversation elsewhere with pointed questions. The tension built until dessert, when a sharp spasm shot through my leg. I flinched, knocking over a glass of water. Susan's face hardened. "You can't even sit through a meal," she spat. "You're useless, a burden dragging us down. Get out of my house." The room went silent. Before I could respond, Amber stood, her expression cold. She grabbed my arm and shoved me toward the door. I stumbled on the icy steps outside, falling hard. My right arm snapped under me, pain blazing through. I looked back, expecting someone to help. No one moved. Michael stared at his plate. Susan turned away, and the door slammed shut. The cold bit my skin as I lay there, arm useless, leg screaming. I forced myself up, gripping my cane, and limped to the street. No hotel was near, and my bank balance was under $200 after the cab. A passing driver slowed an older man with kind eyes. "You okay, miss?" he asked. "I need the bus station," I managed, voice shaky. He drove me there, sharing stories of his own holiday alone, refusing my offer to pay. At the station, a late-night bus was leaving for a town near Margaret's ranch. A clerk, seeing my struggle, helped me board. As the bus rolled through the snowy night, I stared out the window, my arm cradled pain mixing with betrayal. My unit had been my real family, sharing meals, covering each other in danger. We'd mourned losses together, celebrated small victories. Susan, Michael, Amber, they'd taken my money for years but offered nothing when I needed them most. Their rejection stung worse than the fall. The army had taught me strength, but this night tested it. I wasn't sure what waited at Margaret's, but I had nowhere else to turn. The bus dropped me at a small Montana station just before midnight. My arm throbbed in a makeshift sling, my leg burned with every step, and my duffel dragged behind me. The 5-mile trek to Margaret's horse ranch was impossible in my state. A station worker, noticing my struggle, called a local driver, Harold, who was heading that way. He helped me into his truck, asking about my service with quiet respect, unlike the family I'd left behind. His headlights lit the gravel road to the ranch where a single kitchen light glowed. I thanked him, insisting I'd be fine, though doubt gnawed at me. The porch steps felt like a cliff. Sweat stung my eyes as I leaned on my cane, pain pulsing. I knocked the sound sharp in the still night. No answer. Panic rose. Maybe Margaret was away. Maybe she'd reject me too. I knocked harder. Footsteps shuffled inside and the door cracked open. Margaret stood there, silver hair loose, her face stern under reading glasses. "Go away," she said, voice like ice. "Your mother called, you've caused enough trouble." My heart shattered worse than the fall. I swayed, tears blurring my vision. Then her expression shifted, shock, then fierce warmth. "Victoria, oh God, I'm sorry." She gasped, grabbing my arms before I collapsed. "It was a test, I had to see you myself. Susan lied, said you'd gone violent, stolen from her." She pulled me into a tight embrace, mindful of my injuries, and helped me inside. On her worn couch, I spilled everything: the dinner, Susan's cruel words, Amber's shove the fall, Michael's silence. Margaret's face darkened with anger. "My own daughter," she muttered. "I've never been so ashamed." She handed me water and pain pills, reading my tension. "Let's get you to bed," she said. "We'll sort this tomorrow." Her guest room felt like a sanctuary, photos of me in uniform on the dresser, a quilt in my favorite colors. Unlike Susan's storage dump, this space held proof I belonged. Margaret stayed close, humming a familiar tune from childhood as I drifted off. The next weeks at the ranch began my healing. Margaret drove me to a local doctor, an older man who adjusted my therapy plan. The arm cast came off in 6 weeks, but my leg needed longer, with nerve pain lingering. I leaned on Margaret's strength. Her community stepping up. Neighbors cleared paths for my cane, church friends dropped off meals. Patricia called often, sharing her own recovery from a similar betrayal. "They don't deserve you," she said on a video chat, her voice steady. "Focus on who lifts you up." Margaret uncovered Susan's deception when we checked my old bank statements. The thousands I'd sent meant for repairs, or Amber's tuition funded Susan's lavish trips and new furniture. None went to the house or family needs. The betrayal cut deep, but Margaret's rage matched mine. "She should have protected you," she said, sorting papers at her kitchen table. I threw myself into ranch work to cope. I couldn't ride horses yet, but I learned to manage feed schedules and update Margaret's old ledgers. Caring for the animals gave me purpose, their trust a quiet comfort. Patricia's calls kept me grounded, her stories of rebuilding after family rejection mirroring my own. Slowly, I felt my strength return, not just in my body but in my sense of self. Margaret's unwavering support showed me what family could be, and I began to see a future beyond the pain Susan and the others had caused. 6 months after that brutal Christmas night, I'd built a new rhythm at Margaret's horse ranch. My phone rang one afternoon while I was updating the stable records. Susan's name flashed on the screen, the first contact since she'd thrown me out. I hesitated, my healed arm tensing, but answered. Her voice was strained, not with regret, but with need. Amber's company is failing, she said quickly. She mismanaged funds and creditors are circling. You've got your veteran benefits, help her out. It's family. I stared at the Montana horizon, the words, useless one, and Amber's shove echoing in my mind. I don't have a sister, I said coldly, and hung up. That was it. No second chances, no explanations. I'd given them a decade of my earnings, my health, my hope. They'd given me nothing but a slammed door and a broken arm. I was done. Susan's world unraveled soon after. Neighbors later told Margaret that Susan's spending lavish vacations, new cars, all funded by my transfers, caught up with her. Without my money, her debts piled high. The bank foreclosed on her house, forcing her into a cramped rental across town. Amber's startup, propped up by my cash, collapsed under her reckless decisions. She lost everything, filed for unemployment benefits, and took a low-wage job to scrape by. Michael, who'd leaned on Susan's handouts, drowned in credit card debt. His credit score tanked, locking him out of loans or decent housing. Their downfall wasn't my doing. It was the natural consequence of their greed and betrayal, a reality all too common in families stretched thin by lies. At the ranch, I found my footing. Margaret taught me to manage the horse business, from breeding schedules to market sales. My legs still ached on cold days, but therapy and ranch work strengthened me. Patricia stayed close, her calls a lifeline. She'd faced her own family's rejection and built anew, urging me to do the same. You're worth more than their demands, she said during one late-night chat. Choose people who see that. Margaret and Patricia became my true family, not bound by blood but by unwavering support. I enrolled in online agriculture courses, using my military benefits to plan a future in ranching. The horses, with their quiet trust, grounded me in ways Susan never could. One evening, as Margaret and I watched the sunset over the snowy fields, I reflected on the past year. I'd come to her broken, believing I needed Susan's approval to be whole. Now I stood taller, not just despite my cane, but because of it. I'd learned family isn't defined by who shares your name, but by who lifts you when you're down. Susan, Amber, and Michael had taken my sacrifices and thrown them back in my face. Cutting them off wasn't revenge, it was self-respect. I'd spent years chasing their love, but real love doesn't demand payment. It builds you up, like Margaret's steady presence or Patricia's honest words. That lesson, forged through pain and clarity, was my greatest gain. If you've ever cut ties to find your strength, share your story below. It might help someone else see they're enough.
My name is Allison Lawson. I'm 23 years old, and if there's one thing I always believed in, it was loyalty. I grew up watching my parents build a life together from nothing. They weren't glamorous, they weren't flashy, but they had each other's backs through every storm. That quiet steadiness, that invisible thread of trust, was everything I wanted when it came to love. So when I met Aaron in college, I thought I'd finally found it. He wasn't like anyone else. Aaron had this charm that wrapped around a room like smoke, magnetic, impossible to ignore. People gravitated to him, and when his eyes locked on mine, it felt like he'd pulled me into his orbit. His laugh, loud and effortless, made strangers smile. His confidence made me believe he could carry us both through anything. At least that's how it felt in the beginning. I was working 2 part-time jobs at the time, mornings at a cafe, nights folding clothes at a retail store just to cover tuition and bills. Aaron, on the other hand, was still figuring himself out. I didn't mind. I believed in him, believed he'd find his path eventually. Love meant support, right? So I paid for dinners when his wallet was light-covered rent, when he came up short. I told myself that's what you do when you love someone, you lift them until they can stand on their own. For the first year, it even felt worth it. Aaron would brag to his friends that I was thoughtful, dependable. He'd say, "Allison's got my back. She's solid." I felt proud. I thought we were building something real, brick by brick. But slowly the cracks began to show. Aaron loved attention. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone likes being noticed sometimes, right? But with him, it wasn't a flicker, it was a hunger. I'd watch him refresh his Instagram every 2 minutes after posting a picture, grinning wider with every like. His eyes weren't on me, not really. They were on that glowing screen. Then came the nights out. Aaron loved bars and clubs with his friends. I never tried to stop him. I wasn't controlling. But I'd see photos later, his arm draped casually around some girl's shoulders, drinks in his hand that strangers had bought him. When I asked, he'd just laugh. Relax, Allison. It's harmless. You know I'm coming home to you. I wanted to believe him, and for a while I did. Still, something about the way he dismissed my feelings unsettled me. It was as if he thought I'd always be there no matter what. Like my loyalty was a guarantee, a contract written in stone. The little things began to pile up. When I told him I got a raise at the cafe, he barely looked up. That's nice, he said, changing the subject to some influencer drama. When I asked about his classes, he rolled his eyes. Boring. Can we not talk about school? I was still trying, asking about his life planning date nights, making space for him. In return, he gave me scraps. I told myself it was just a phase, that every couple hit rough patches. But deep down, I felt the shift. And then came the night that changed everything. We were curled up on my couch, a random TV show flickering in the background. I was halfway through telling him about a new project at work when I realized he wasn't listening. His phone screen lit up every few seconds, and his grin widened each time. I tried to keep my voice casual. Who's that? He barely looked up. Oh, just a friend. But I saw the messages. The tone, the winky faces, the kind of things no one sends if it's platonic. My chest tightened. Aaron, I said slowly. Are you seriously texting another woman like that while we're sitting here together? He laughed. Actually laughed like I'd just said the most ridiculous thing in the world. Relax, Allison. I'm just keeping my options open. The words hit like ice water down my spine. I froze. Keeping your options open, I repeated, hoping I'd misheard. He didn't even flinch. He just tapped out another reply, tossed his phone onto the cushion, and shrugged. Yeah. What's the big deal? Everyone does it. No, I thought. Not everyone. Not if they're serious. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. Everyone doesn't do that, Aaron. Not when they're in love. Not when they respect the person they're with. He finally turned to me, his eyes wide with mock innocence. You're acting jealous over a couple of texts. It's not like I'm sleeping with her. I couldn't believe it. You're flirting with someone else while sitting next to me. That's disrespectful. He rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. You're so dramatic. Look, I'm 23. I'm not dead. Women are going to message me. If I flirt a little, it's harmless. It doesn't change that I'm with you, does it? But it did change everything. The way he smirked, the casual cruelty in his tone, it burned itself into my memory. For 2 years, I'd poured myself into this relationship, covering bills, working shifts, planning our future, and now he was telling me I should be grateful to be just another option on his list. You actually believe that, don't you? I whispered. Aaron shrugged. You're too uptight. I need someone who can keep up with me, not get insecure over a couple of texts. I leaned back, staring at him like I was seeing him for the first time. Insecure, I echoed softly. You're sitting here openly flirting with other women, and when I say it hurts, you call me insecure. That's not normal, Aaron. That's not love. For a moment, I thought he might soften, that maybe he'd see the weight in my eyes. Instead, he crossed his arms and smirked again. You'll get over it. You always do. And in that moment, something inside me went quiet. Not rage, not tears, just silence, a steady, cold silence that told me this was the beginning of the end. I excused myself, told him I was going to bed. He scoffed and went back to his phone, already grinning at someone else's attention. But as I lay in the dark, the glow of his screen flashing every few minutes, I knew one thing for certain. If Aaron wanted to keep his options open, then I was about to close mine permanently. I didn't sleep that night. The room was dark except for the faint glow of Aaron's phone as it lit up every few minutes. Each vibration was like a nail hammering into the coffin of what I thought we had. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, my thoughts loud. He was right there beside me, grinning at other women through a screen while I lay in silence a foot away. And yet somehow I felt miles from him. I replayed the words over and over, I'm just keeping my options open. At first I thought maybe he was joking, some immature attempt to rile me up. But the way he'd said it so casually, with that smirk, that little shrug, no, he meant it. That was the part that broke me. Not the flirting, not even the lies. It was the certainty in his tone, as if my love was guaranteed, as if no matter what he did, I'd still be there. Like loyalty was something he was entitled to, not something he had to earn. For hours, my thoughts spiraled. Am I not enough? Am I too serious? Too boring. I tried to pick apart his words, dissect his laughter, figure out if maybe I was overreacting. But then another thought cut through all the noise. If the roles were reversed, if I were texting other men beside him, how would he react? The answer was clear. He'd explode. He'd accuse me of betrayal. He'd call me untrustworthy. He'd storm out and never let me live it down. The hypocrisy settled in my chest like lead. That was when the clarity came. It wasn't me. It wasn't my seriousness. It wasn't my loyalty. It was him. Aaron didn't respect me. He didn't value me. And the longer I stayed, the more pieces of myself I'd lose trying to prove I was worth the bare minimum of his attention. I turned my head to look at him. He'd fallen asleep. Eventually, his phone clutched loosely in his hand. The faintest smile lingered on his face, even in dreams. I stared at him for the long time. At the boyish curl of his hair, the smooth lines of his jaw, the body I had once traced with reverence. Now all I saw was someone who thought I was disposable. My chest ached. Quietly, I slipped out of bed, padded to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water just to hear something other than the pounding of my heart. The silence of the apartment pressed down on me. For the first time since we met, I felt utterly alone in his presence. I leaned against the counter and whispered into the darkness, "I can't do this anymore." The words hung heavy in the air, almost foreign on my tongue, but truer than anything I'd said in months. When morning came, Aaron was still asleep, sprawled across the bed like he owned the world. I stood in the doorway, watching the rise and fall of his chest. His phone buzzed again on the nightstand. I didn't need to check to know it wasn't for me. For a moment, I thought about waking him up, about demanding answers, about screaming until he finally saw what he'd done. But then, what was the point? He didn't see me before. He wouldn't see me now. So I didn't wake him. Instead, I dressed quietly, grabbed my bag, and left for work. The morning air was cool against my face, sharp enough to keep me grounded. As I walked, the city moved around me in its usual rhythm. Cars rushing, people hurrying, life happening. And for the first time in a long time, I thought, maybe I can step out of his orbit. Maybe I can reclaim myself. At work, I went through the motions, but his words haunted me all day. Relax, Allison. Everyone does it. You'll get over it. You always do. Did I? Every time Aaron brushed off my hurt, every time he rolled his eyes at my effort, every time he laughed at my pain, I had swallowed it down. I had gotten over it. But not this time. I wasn't sure how yet, or when, or what it would look like. But somewhere between my morning shift and the afternoon rush, a decision settled into me, like a seed. If Aaron wanted to keep his options open, then he was about to find out what it felt like to have one less option. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to beg. All I had to do was walk away. And for the first time since his smirk cut me open, that thought gave me a strange, steady sense of power. That night I returned home. Aaron was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone like he hadn't moved all day. He looked up, gave me a half smile, and then dove back into the screen. Something inside me went still. I knew then the end was closer than he realized. The day after, I felt different. Not free yet, but hollow, like I'd already started to pack up pieces of myself and carry them away from him. Aaron didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and just assumed I'd been the way I always had. When I walked through the door that evening, he barely looked up from his phone. "Hey," he muttered, his thumb still flying across the screen. That was the first sign. He didn't even bother to meet my eyes. I set my bag down, my heart hammering. The words I'd rehearsed all day felt clumsy in my throat, but the silence between us was louder than my fear. "Aaron," I said softly. He hummed in response, eyes glued to the glow of his screen. I swallowed. "We need to talk." That got his attention. He groaned loudly, tossing his phone onto the coffee table like I'd interrupted something monumental. "Oh my God, not this again. You're still stuck on that." My fingers curled into fists at my sides. I kept my voice even. "Yes. I'm still stuck on the fact that you told me you were keeping your options open, that you called me insecure for caring, that you laughed while you did it." He rolled his eyes so hard I thought he'd give himself a headache. "Allison, you're blowing this way out of proportion. It was just texting. You're acting like I cheated." "It wasn't just texting," I said. "It was disrespect. It was you telling me I was a placeholder while you kept searching for something better." He leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, smirking like a king, surveying a subject who dared to complain. "You're so dramatic. God, you act like we're married. We've been together for 2 years? You can't expect me to lock myself down already." "Sorry if that makes me a villain in your little fairy tale. The words landed like blows, but this time I didn't flinch. I just studied him, really studied him, and wondered how I'd once thought this man was my future. My voice dropped quiet, almost steady. So what am I to you then, Practice? He tilted his head, smirk widening. Don't be so sensitive. You're comfortable, reliable. It's nice having someone like you around. But I'm not going to stop living my life just because you can't handle it. There it was, the truth I had been trying not to see. I felt something inside me click. The ache in my chest went still, replaced by clarity. If I'm just one of your options, Aaron, I said, rising slowly to my feet, then I'd rather not be on the list at all. His smirk faltered. For the first time, I saw his mask crack. What's that supposed to mean? It means we're done. My voice was calm, not shaky, not tearful, just final. He laughed sharp and ugly. You're kidding. You're really going to throw away 2 years over a few harmless texts. I shook my head. No, I'm walking away because you don't respect me, and you never will. The laughter in his eyes dimmed into irritation. His tone sharpened. You think you're going to find someone better than me? Good luck with that. You'll come crawling back. You always do. I looked at him. Really looked at him, the boy I once thought was magnetic, the man who had convinced me I was lucky to be tolerated, and all I felt was relief. No, Aaron, I said quietly. This time I won't. I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked to the door. He didn't chase me. He didn't apologize. He just scoffed, sinking back into the couch. You'll regret this, he muttered. Like a curse he could throw at my back. But as I stepped out into the night air, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a weight lifting off my chest. I didn't regret it, not for a second. The first week after I left, Aaron didn't call. He didn't text. At first, I thought maybe he was giving me space, or maybe he was too proud to reach out. But then my phone lit up with screenshots from mutual friends. Aaron had turned our breakup into a show. Selfies in bars, arms draped around strangers. Captions screaming. Single and thriving. Or no one can hold me back. He posed with drinks bought by other women, leaned into the camera with that same smirk I once thought was irresistible. It was like he was auditioning for a role no one had asked him to play, the untouchable bachelor. At first, his friends hyped him up in the comments. Go King, she didn't deserve you, living your best life. But then, the cheers started to fade. The tone shifted. Likes dwindled. His highlight reel was losing its audience. Because no matter how many smiles he posted, the cracks were showing. Meanwhile, my world grew quieter and better. I picked up more hours at work, not because I had to cover his bills anymore, but because I wanted to. The extra money gave me room to breathe for the first time in years. I joined a gym, something I'd always wanted, but never had the time or energy for. My mornings became mine again. Early runs, the smell of fresh coffee in my own kitchen, cooking meals for one instead of two without resentment, simmering beneath the surface. It was simple, but it felt like healing. Without Aaron's constant chaos, my life had space. I hadn't realized how much noise he created until it was gone. One night, as I scrolled through my feed, I stumbled across another one of his posts, a grainy video of him kissing some girl in the corner of a nightclub. The comments were awkward this time, less celebration, more silence. I put my phone down and let out a small laugh. It didn't hurt anymore. It didn't sting the way it used to. It just looked sad. Because while Aaron chased attention like a drug, I was learning how to be whole without it. At work, my manager pulled me aside after a busy shift. Allison, you've really stepped up lately. You're reliable, focused. Have you thought about applying for team lead? Her words made me blink. I realized how much energy I used to spend putting out Aaron's fires, keeping track of his moods, patching up his mistakes, chasing after his approval. Now that all that energy belonged to me, people were noticing. The truth hit me like sunlight. I wasn't weaker without him. I was stronger. And while Aaron was out there performing for strangers, I was rebuilding brick by steady brick a life that finally belonged to me. Still whispers trickled in from mutual friends. Apparently the girl from that nightclub video, she was gone within a month. Ghosted him. Used him for a few nights and then disappeared. I wasn't surprised. Aaron had always believed attention equaled affection. He never stopped to think that not everyone valued loyalty the way I did. I sat on my balcony one evening, the city lights flickering in the distance, and thought, he opened his options. And now he's learning how empty those options really are. A part of me felt almost sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the smirk on his face when he said, you'll get over it. You always do. And I realized he was right in a way. I was getting over it, completely. By the third month, Aaron's pattern was obvious. Another girl, another short-lived fling. Posts of candlelit dinners, filtered selfies, captions like, "Finally found someone who gets me." And then just as quickly, silence. Deleted photos. Passive-aggressive quotes about heartbreak. It was like watching reruns of a show I'd already seen, except this time I wasn't cast in the lead role. I was just an observer, sipping my coffee, scrolling past, and moving on. But the whispers reached me anyway. Did you hear one friend said in hushed tones over lunch? Aaron maxed out some girl's credit card. She kicked him out of her apartment. He's been couch surfing. Another friend shook her head. He burned so many bridges, Allison. Even his guys are tired of covering for him. I just listened, quietly stirring sugar into my drink. On the surface, I was calm. But deep down, something unexpected stirred in me. Not triumph, not bitterness. Closure. Because while his world was shrinking, mine was expanding. At work, I'd accepted the promotion my manager hinted at. Suddenly, I wasn't just clocking in and out. I was leading, organizing shifts, training new hires. My boss noticed, my coworkers respected me, and for once my achievements were mine alone, not weighed down by someone else's irresponsibility. Physically, I felt stronger too. My morning runs grew longer. I could lift more at the gym. The sweat, the rhythm, the ache. It all reminded me that my body belonged to me, not to the exhaustion of holding up another person's life. Even socially, I was blooming again. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected while babysitting Aaron's moods. Movie nights, late dinners, laughter that didn't feel forced. They told me I looked lighter, happier. And they were right. Because the truth was simple, without Aaron, I had space to become myself again. One evening, I ran into an old mutual friend at the grocery store. We chatted by the fruit aisle, the conversation casual until her expression shifted. Honestly, she said, lowering her voice, Aaron's not doing great. He kind of spiraled. Even his closest friends pulled away. He's burned too many bridges. He doesn't have anyone left to blame but himself. I nodded, tossing a pack of strawberries into my cart. Inside, I felt a strange mix of sadness and inevitability. Aaron had once told me, everyone does it. Everyone keeps their options open. But what he didn't realize was that when you treat everyone as an option, eventually, no one chooses you back. That night, sitting on my balcony with the city lights stretching before me, I thought about betrayal. How it makes you question yourself first, tearing at your self-worth until you wonder if maybe you deserved it. But the truth is, betrayal isn't about the betrayed. It's about the betrayer. And Aaron had revealed himself in every choice, every smirk, every careless shrug. I didn't lose him. He lost me. And the options he was so proud to keep open. One by one they were closing until all that was left was the silence he'd once mocked me with. It started small. One evening after work, I sat down with dinner when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the message made me laugh out loud. Hey, just checking in. How have you been? Aaron. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone face down. Silence was easier than any response I could have given. But silence wasn't what Aaron expected. The next night, you probably think I'm crazy, but I miss you. Can we talk? Still, I said nothing. By the third message, his tone shifted. I know I messed up. You're the only one who really understood me. Those other girls, they weren't anything. Not compared to you. Please, Allison, just coffee, just one conversation. I put the phone down and laced up my shoes. A run in the cool night air felt better than reopening wounds. But Aaron wasn't done. Over the next week, the texts poured in, some pleading, some angry, some nostalgic, all frantic. You don't get it. I was scared. That's why I said I was keeping my options open. You're the only real option I ever had. Please don't do this. Then, you're throwing away everything we built. You'll regret this. I never typed back. And then one night, he escalated. I came home from work to see a car parked near my apartment building. Leaning against it, arms crossed, like he'd rehearsed the scene, was Aaron. Allison, he called out as I walked past, keys in hand. Come on, you're really not going to talk to me. I didn't break stride. He hurried to catch up. I was stupid, okay, I know that. But you can't just erase me like this. You know you still care. I stopped, finally turning to face him. The streetlight cast his face half in shadow. Once that sight would have unraveled me. Now it just looked hollow. I did care, I said, my voice calm, steady. Once. But you made it clear I wasn't enough, and I'm not going back to that. His smirk, that familiar, infuriating smirk, wavered. So that's it. You're just going to throw us away like we were nothing. I gave the smallest shrug. You already did that. I'm just finishing what you started. For a moment, he stood frozen. the mask-cracked panic flickering in his eyes. But before he could say anything else, I turned, walked up the steps, and unlocked my door. I didn't slam it. I didn't cry. I just closed it firmly behind me. That night, one last message buzzed through. I'll wait for you. I don't care how long it takes. I know you'll come back. But the truth was simple. He was waiting for a woman who didn't exist anymore. The Allison who tolerated smirks and shrugged off disrespect was gone. And the woman standing in her place, she wasn't going back. Months passed. By then, Aaron's attempts had slowed to the occasional half-hearted text, sometimes venomous, sometimes pathetic. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need to. Word trickled through mutual friends. Aaron had burned too many bridges. After one failed fling and another, he was now crashing at his sister's place, complaining to anyone who would listen about how women are trash. It would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. Meanwhile, my life had never felt fuller. At work, I'd earned my promotion and grown into it. My team respected me. My boss praised my reliability. I started setting money aside a savings account that for the first time wasn't drained by someone else's bad decisions. My mornings began with runs that cleared my head, evenings with friends who brought genuine laughter instead of forced smiles. My apartment was small, but it was mine. The quiet felt like a gift, not a punishment. I no longer felt the need to prove my worth to someone who dismissed it. And then just as I felt the chapter closing for good, Aaron sent one final message. Allison. I don't know how else to say this. I screwed up. I thought I was protecting myself by keeping my options open, but I only ruined the best thing I ever had. Please, I need you. I don't care what happened. I just want us again. I stared at the words on my screen for a long moment. Once they would have gutted me. Once I would have clung to them like a lifeline. Now they felt like ashes in my hands. For the first time since it all began, I actually typed back. Aaron, you told me I was just a backup plan, that you wanted your options open. Well, now they're wide open, and I'm not one of them. I don't hate you. I don't wish you harm. But you don't belong in my life anymore. Goodbye. I hit send. Then I blocked his number, not out of anger, not out of spite, but because it was simply done. The betrayal that had once hollowed me out no longer had power over me. It had reshaped me, yes, but not in the way he intended. Betrayal makes you question yourself first. You wonder if you weren't enough, if you could have done something different. But the truth is, people reveal who they are in their choices. And Aaron revealed himself every time he smirked and shrugged at my pain. I didn't lose him. He lost me. And I didn't need to do anything for karma to catch up. Life handled that on its own. One morning, sunlight poured through my window as I brewed coffee. The air was cool, the city alive outside my balcony. I breathed it in and realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was free. The girl who once stayed quiet beside him in the dark, watching his phone light up with other women's attention, no longer existed. The woman sipping her coffee in the morning light, she belonged to herself, and that was more than enough.